Welcome to the show. And I have my new friend Cecilia here. And she is an author and a horsewoman. She has done many different things, horticulturist and gardener and landscaper. She's just a woman, many hats, many hats. She's also hiked, and which I don't do. Oh my goodness. She's penned two books, and the latest is called Augusta. I have a copy right here. It's awesome. I've been going through it. It's just, oh my gosh. And some of the, uh, critics, their stuff. I mean, I've got it right here. It's just amazing. Some of the wonderful things they say. As soon as I can find it here, I should have done it better. But I mean, this is from Curtis reviews. In this novel, inspired by the challenging life of the author's grandmother, a woman is left to raise her four children alone during the 1920s. And smooth, flowing poise carries the tale forward at a steady pace. Farm and city vinaigrettes create vivid images of the time, place, and economic status, and Augusta emerges as a formidable woman in the face of daunting odds. A historically evocative period drama that's poignant and disquieting. I mean, that's just one of them. I mean, it's a good thing. And here's our friend Cecilia right here with us. So let's just jump in and talk to her right now. Hi, how are you?
I am doing very well, thank you. Thanks for
Wonderful.
inviting me to interview with you.
Oh, not a problem. I saw you and I thought, well, that's an interesting book. A lot of the stuff I just want to tell you up front that a lot of the stuff like the wringer washer that your grandmother used and everything. My grandmother used that. My great grandmother used that. I learned to wash clothes on a wringer washing machine that she had. So it's like, yeah, your fingers get smashed. It's like she said, keep them fingers away. Oh my gosh. So, how are you today?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Yes. I mean, we were chatting before we started, and I guess you're in Vermont at the moment.
Yes, we live between Michigan and Vermont. We're back and forth. Our dog Flurry gets in the car and goes, "Where are we going this time? Which way?" I'm not sure which place she prefers, but she loves getting there either way.
Oh yeah. Well, that's good that she rides and everything really well. That's some dogs don't, but that's good that she does. That impresses me. Um, you have brought the 20th century to life in this book, I do believe, and the struggles that women went through. I mean, married or single or, anything, anything. Um, and as I said earlier, I've been going through your book and I can't put it down. It's like, where's she going now? Now she's at the restaurant. Oh my gosh, now her husband's left.
Yes, I have her becoming a waitress when she's rarely ever even eaten in a restaurant.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I know she was a waitress. This is fiction because there's so much I don't know. And I wrote it from her perspective.
Right.
I thought I was going to write it in the omniscient third person so I could tell the reader what she thought and what her children thought. And but when I sat down to write, I began writing it from her perspective, and it just held. So and there were moments when I thought she was sitting over here in the corner. I'd sit down to write one thing and something else would come out. I thought I feel like I didn't feel like I was my mind was wandering. I felt like I was being directed.
Yeah, yeah, she was probably sitting there in the chair saying, Cecilia, you write this, that's the right, this is what happened. And, she's the inspiration for the book. What exactly about her inspired you to write this book?
She was, even as a young child, she passed away when I was quite young, but she was a strong woman, stronger than, I mean, my mother was a strong woman, but my grandmother stood by herself a lot. My mother had my father with her the whole way, and I think she could have stood on her own too, but Augusta was on her own very early in her life, and stood up to it. She
She
put her
seems
head
like
down
a
and kept going.
yeah, she seems like a feisty lady.
The image on the cover is from a daguerreotype that my aunt gave me.
Oh yeah?
It is a 2.5 by 3.5 inch daguerreotype. I was so glad they could use it on the cover.
Uh-huh.
When she handed it to me, she reminded me that, your grandmother was married off to the widowed father of one of her classmates when she was 13. And I
Yeah.
was looking at that image when she told me this was taken on her wedding day and she's wearing her 8th grade graduation dress.
Oh, really?
Yes.
She's 13 in this picture?
She looks older, doesn't she? I think her
Yes.
life has already been difficult. According to my aunt, that was taken when she was 13.
Wow. I would have thought she was in her 20s.
That's looking at it, I would think the same
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
she told me that was when she was 13. Life was harder then for everyone, but I
Well,
think for women, even more so. I put off writing the scene where her mother tells her she's going to marry this
very.
man who's old enough to be her father. And I kept putting it off, putting it off. I usually write fairly in order. I sometimes jump around,
Mhm.
but I put off writing that scene. And when I finally got around to it, I felt I had it ready, and I felt as if I were eavesdropping on a conversation. How would a mother do this? She had to have very few other choices.
Yeah.
And so telling her daughter that this is a good, hardworking man, and you may not get an offer like this again,
Yeah.
so, ooh,
Oh, I know.
it
And you're
made me
13.
cringe, but,
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, one day you're, 13-year-old and here, you're helping your friend and next thing you know, your friend's mother passes away and, your mother says you got, me and your dad's talked and we think it's a good deal and oh my gosh. How
and in
scared
in
could
my
she
imagination, I don't know if this happened, but I did have her kind of fall for him because,
Yeah,
she's 13 and he's
yeah.
telling her she's a good cook and she's pretty and,
Yeah.
why not?
Well,
What would a 13-year-old think?
exactly. Exactly. But I mean, how scared could she have been? I mean, to herself, she'd obviously had to keep it to herself, but you know, well, and girls had to help, cook and clean and stuff when they were young and everything back then, but still, that's just oh my goodness.
And I know she was very poor because my mother told me that she had told her about coming to Detroit wearing a feed sack for a dress.
Yeah,
That was the only dress she had.
yeah,
So that kind of poverty is hard for most of us to understand. I did research about what it would have been like in Arkansas at the turn of the 20th century for the poor and what it was like in Detroit at the turn of the century for the poor. Detroit didn't have a lot of tenements, but I did put her in a tenement because I didn't
mhm,
know what she did. The other choice would have been to be in a shack along the Detroit River. I guess some of the
yeah,
poor people lived along the river.
yeah. Now,
Um,
didn't her first husband, or maybe this was the second one, the one that she moved to Detroit, he worked for Ford Motor Company building cars, didn't he?
Yeah,
Is that why they went
he bgot her from Arkansas
to Detroit?
because things were tough in Arkansas and he came for work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was he brought her to from Arkansas to Detroit. And I do not know precisely how that marriage ended. No one told me. I never saw a picture of either of them.
Really?
No one's no one spoke of her first husband that I can recall. My mother did say that she married the same abusive drunk twice. So I made them both be nice people at the beginning.
Yeah.
And when completely different things went wrong,
True.
for each of them, and alcohol was the crutch they leaned on
Yeah, it was
when
kind
things
of
were
the common
tough.
denominator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that was based on the stories my mother had told me. And this was my father's mother. And these were stories that she had shared with her daughter-in-law.
Oh, I see. I
So,
see.
the
Wow.
kind of things the girls talk about that she may not,
True.
that my father may never have asked her or cared to hear about.
Well,
So,
that's true. I mean, guys don't talk about
yeah.
that sort of thing.
So she does show up in my first book, in Walking Home, when I'm sitting on top of Mount Baker and I see snakes sunning themselves. I think of my grandmother who, when she found out I was afraid of snakes, she taught me how to catch them and showed me how beautiful they were. So she does show up several times in Walking Home Trail Stories, but this is her story. But she did have a lot of effect on me. She was the first person to walk with me in the woods and point out the walking stick. It was like, it looked like a collection of sticks walking along a branch. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing.
Yeah,
And I
they're
wouldn't have seen it if she hadn't pointed it out to me. So,
yeah, I also had a grandmother and a great grandmother that, were country folk and done the same thing, taught me, how to love nature and different things and tell the different leaves on the trees and what tree was what and stuff like that. It's just amazing that, you can put so much in this one little book, you know. I mean, the stories and the way, as it said, it flows really, really well. How she gets from one place to another is, it doesn't, because I've read some books where, they're here and then they're there, but there's kind of you can kind of put together how she got there.
yeah, I wanted to tell you how difficult the trip was.
Yeah.
She was pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she was or not. Again, one of the reasons it made it easier for me to write this as fiction was because there was so much I didn't know. I didn't know for sure what happened when, and the more people I asked, the more varied the responses. I had notes on this book that I was going to write 35 years ago. And when I started this, I went to the file drawer and pulled it up. I can't find my car keys half the time, but I pulled that file up.
Yeah.
And I was able to look at a list of people that I had decided to interview. And by the time I started the book, they had all passed away. And so all of her children were gone, and interviewing her grandchildren, that's when I got completely conflicting stories. My siblings and I can't even agree on how my father's accident occurred.
Yeah.
But in the book, he is run over by a garbage truck because he's playing in an alley, in a cardboard box in the alley. And my brother said, no, it was a Wonder Bread truck. And my sister said he was hit by a trolley car. So, I mean,
yeah.
So it made it easier. I wrote the stories I remember being told.
So her son was your dad?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Buddy was my dad.
Okay, because I'm up to the part where your dad gets hit by the truck out in the road.
Yes.
And they're in the hospital, and then I looked at the time and I was like, oh, baloney, I've got to go talk to her.
Sorry, I interrupted you. But
that's okay. But that's where I'm up to. And, whenever you said, no, my dad was this, I'm going, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Okay. Yeah. So finish this one. Like I said, I'm up to where your dad gets run over. That sounded bad.
He had a huge scar on his leg.
Really? Yeah.
And
oh my goodness.
But he didn't limp on it until he was very old.
Oh, really?
So whatever they did in that hospital, they did a good job.
They did good. They did well.
He was 7.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He was just, So, because he was playing in a box or something is what.
Yeah, he was playing in a box.
Yeah.
In the alley.
In the alley. Yeah. Wow.
The harder I looked, the more complicated it became. And I wrote the stories that I heard and told you, the reader, how it affected me, what I thought when I heard that she'd been married off to someone old enough to be her
Yeah.
father when she was 13.
Yeah.
And thinking about that, I thought about, I read Anne Frank when I was Anne Frank's age.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very touching for me. And I thought, what if I'd known this story the way it is now when I was 13? How would I have felt about that? It's just,
Yeah.
um,
It makes you think,
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things about historical fiction is
Yeah.
that it allows you not just to learn about the history, but to immerse yourself in it and experience it by getting to know the people in the books. And that's one of the things I enjoy about reading historical fiction, is that it allows me to do more than hear about the Civil War, but to hear
Yeah.
how it was for that person, that man or
Right.
that woman.
Mhm.
And it's more than a story then. It's you get to experience it. You
Yeah.
get to time travel.
And experiencing what they experience. Now, one of the ladies in here, whenever she had Augusta had her first child, the Polish, I think she was Polish.
Agatha, yes.
Yes, Agatha. And how they couldn't really understand each other, and they were doing, little sign language, and they become like really good friends, and she watched the kids, and it was just
Yeah, again, my mother told me that a Polish woman had helped her during the time when her first marriage broke up. And so I don't know who she was. I don't know what her name was. I don't know anything about her, but that's what made me create Agatha.
Yeah, yeah. I liked that woman. I would want her as my neighbor.
Yes. Yes.
I would, yeah, yeah.
A sweet, friendly neighbor who
Yeah.
lived a similar life to Augusta, only in Poland.
The lady at her friend at the restaurant when she started working at the restaurant.
Jane.
Yeah.
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 Jane, who wears tight skirts and walks fast.
Yes, yeah. He's flirting with you. Oh no. Yeah, he's flirting with you, And it amazes me how Augusta learned about life by living it. You know what I'm saying?
She got
But
very little instruction
yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
And having an 8th grade education back then was not uncommon. Even in
Right.
Detroit in the 1920s, it wasn't uncommon for poor people's children to end their education at 8th grade.
Her brother, Augusta's brother, wanted to go to school, but he couldn't because he had to go,
They took him out of school as soon as he was
Yeah.
old enough to be useful on the farm.
Yeah, I can't say enough about this book. People, get this book.
Thank you for holding it up there.
Well,
if they want to read some excerpts, they can go to my website at celiaryker.com.
Okay.
And if you hold up the book again, they can see how to spell my name.
Whoops. There you go.
CeliaRyker.com, and then you can learn a little bit more about me and also read some excerpts and find out where you can get the book.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your first book, and I just wanted to touch on that briefly.
Walking Home Trail Stories.
Walking Home Trail Stories. And you can get that book on your website as well, yes?
As well, yes. And read excerpts of that one as well there.
Tell us about it.
Well, my husband and I day hike often, and we had hiked onto the Long Trail, which goes from Vermont's border at Massachusetts to Canada along the crest of the Green Mountains. So I'd see along the trail, I'd think, oh, it says it's 2.3 miles to the shelter. I wonder what the shelters are like. And so I've been thinking about that, and it was my 59th birthday that pushed me over the edge. I thought, you're going to be officially old next year.
Oh, no.
And if you're ever going to do this, you better start now. So and I found somebody to hike with me. Sandy was great. We had to do it in sections because sometimes Sandy was unavailable, and for several years she wasn't available, and I did several pieces by myself, and those disasters are in the book. But yeah, and it's about my hike, but it's also about the people that walked with me. Augusta was one of them, even though she was no longer living. And I had a cousin who we had ladders that we had to go down. That's how steep the rock was.
Oh, wow.
And every time I descended a ladder, I remembered my cousin BJ waiting at the bottom of the ladder when we were out in the barn near the railroad track where we weren't supposed to be. And we went up in the loft to see if there were some treasures up there, and all we found was moldy hay and cobwebs. But every time I went down the ladder, I thought of BJ at the bottom of that ladder when we were probably 10 years old. So
to start hiking, especially by yourself, you know.
I did several sections by myself. My sister Faye said, just don't do it. If you don't have anybody to hike with, just don't do it. I thought, I need to finish this hike, and Sandy can't be here. So
Yeah.
and there were some kind of creepy moments.
Well, can you tell us one or two without giving everything away?
Well, there was one where I was by myself and I was at a cabin called Lucy's Lookout.
Uh-huh.
And I heard a noise that sounded like somebody walking, and the trail came up on the side of the building. And it sounded like somebody walking with the bladder that we carry our water in our backpack, that it was getting low and I could hear it glugging, but they kept going right on by. And then a little while later, the glugging was over here near the edge of the building. And it on and off, I heard that all night, and I couldn't figure out what was making that noise. And it happened all night long. And when I got up in the morning and went outside and looked around, I didn't see anything, but I told one of my friends who was also hiking about it. And he said, I was walking up to that place one day, up to Lucy's Lookout, when some people who had spent the night there said, that is one weird place to stay. And they didn't offer much more than that, but they thought, you don't want to spend the night there. And he didn't. He went on to the next shelter, but he had been told by other hikers that was one strange place to stay. And I don't know what that noise was. I can't even imagine.
Oh,
it was like a glugging water sound, but
wow,
there was nothing there. There was no water anywhere nearby.
Well, that was my next question. Was there a stream or
No, not that I know of. I had walked up there during the day with my husband. Like I said, we day hike a lot.
Right.
I had gone there with friends and with my husband, and there was no indication of any other campsite nearby, and there was no indication of water anywhere near.
Exactly. We're entering a spot now.
The twilight zone, yes. Well, it made me wonder who Lucy was, and if maybe Lucy was there somehow. I don't know, but now they just call it the Lookout. But I have heard other people refer to it as Lucy's Lookout.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe something happened to Lucy and Lucy's still there.
I don't know. But I'm not the only one that had an odd experience there, at least. So I don't know.
Well, well,
the sound was so strange.
Oh, well, holy moly. Now I'm going to be wondering about that all night.
Sorry.
Thanks, Celia.
Nothing bothered me. I got up and went on my way and kept going. But I did write that in the book. And when my sister read it, she said, this is why you shouldn't be hiking alone. How far were you from a road? And I said, oh, probably 8 miles. And she said, you're in the dark by yourself and you're 8 miles from everything. And I said, well, I don't know. So,
well, I just, anyway. It was just something to do.
Yeah, well, it was part of the trail. So there I was.
Yep, there you were. 3 minutes left.
Oh, well.
So, and you've answered all my questions that I had beforehand, plus some extras that, I was thinking as we were talking. And so if there was anything that you could ask your grandmother, if she, walked in the door and said, hey, Celia, what's going on?
Well, the first thing I would do is tell her that I was proud to be her granddaughter. But if my question for her would be, what do you think of the book?
There you go.
She would approve or not, because she was a fairly private person, and I don't know if she would approve or not. I'm hoping she would, but I don't know for sure.
Oh, I bet she would. And she'd probably add some good juicy gossip and
Oh, yeah,
you know.
she might say, well, you should have put this part in there.
There you go. There you go. So, oh my goodness. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. This has been so much fun, and we're going to have to come back and talk about your other book.
Oh, yes. And yeah, I'd be
You know,
glad to. And I have another one coming
well, that was,
next year.
I was going to ask what you've got on store coming up next. If there's another thing, is this going to
I'm
be?
all over the map in genre. I went from a memoir about hiking to a novel about my grandmother. And now I have a middle grade children's book, like Black Beauty.
Uh-huh.
It is pulled by the horse. And he's a very handsome, talented show horse who is just full of himself and gets older and can no longer win at the big shows. And he ends up becoming a horse they use for riding lessons. You know, little kids are learning how to ride on him, and he's not groomed to perfection the way he used to be. He has hair sticking out of his ears. And the big problem is, because he was a show horse and was valuable, he was never turned out with other horses. And now he's in a herd, and his social skills are very poor.
Yeah, that sounds like a horse I used to own when I was little. So there you go. Well, I want to thank you again, Mrs. Celia. And I mean, everybody, give us your website one more time.
CeliaRyker.com. I was so lucky to get that. I didn't know anything about it until my publisher helped me, and I got my name, CeliaRyker.com.
Yeah. Nice. Well, this is the book, the latest book. And then when the horse book comes out, I mean, we'll have to talk about your horse training and, you was a horse trainer and we didn't even get into that yet.
No.
So we'll have to do that on the horse book. How about that?
Very good.
All right. Well, once again, you are welcome back anytime, and go to Celia's website and get the books and read the books. And I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff on your website as well. Lots of good goodies. This is the latest Augusta, and we will be back next time with some more great stuff to chat about. So until then, we'll see you later.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.